One of the greatest joys a mentor can have is when a mentee is able to implement something that is suggested or recommended or advised, whether or not it worked. Make sure you show up on time. As a matter of fact, even if you can go a few minutes before time, that would be great. So that is very important because first impression matters. And I always say that you can never get a second chance to make a first impression. So make sure that your first impression is great. One of the major keys in active listening is that with active listening, you're always making sure you're asking follow-up questions. So just make sure you respect their time and you're not just because maybe they are flowing and they're just giving you some great response and it seems like they're enjoying the conversation. You just want to let the time go without, making reference to the fact that you guys agreed on a particular. Now, you want to be very authentic and honest. Don't try to fake words just because you want it to sound right. Just be real and be honest. Hi there. Welcome back to this channel. If you don't know me, my name is Alex Yeboah Sasu. I'm a certified life coach. And on this channel, I share goal-setting tips, relationship advice, and some in-betweens, all from a Christian perspective. Now, this is part 7 of the mentorship series. And in this part, I'll be talking about your first session with the potential mentor. Now, remember, this is coming from the backdrop of all that we've discussed so far in this mentorship series. I want to encourage you to go back and check them out if you haven't done that already. And as a matter of fact, we will put all the links to the previous episodes in this description to this video so you can actually have easy access to it. So now at this point, you've already, had a conversation with this mentor or potential mentor, and you've actually requested for some time to spend with this mentor and have, a good interaction. And so I'm going to describe what you should do in this first interaction in 3 parts. So the first part is going to be before the actual meeting. The second part will be during the meeting. And then the last part will be after the meeting. Now let's start with before the meeting. 2 things come to mind. Number 1 is make sure you confirm the date and the time. So, and of course the venue as well. So if you know that, hey, based on the conversation you had, you're gonna have an in-person meeting, make sure you're on the same page regarding the time. You can send a reminder and say, hey, excuse me, sir, I'm just following up to just confirm that, you're gonna be available for our meeting at this place at this time. If it's an online meeting, the same thing that you do. The second thing that I think that you need to do is that come up with at least 3 questions that you can ask this potential mentor. Remember, you've already done all your homework. You know the kind of conversation you're going to have and the area you're going to focus on. So let's say if it's a conversation about, say, marriage, you want to learn more about marriage, you can just come up with 3 big questions in that subject area that you think that will be an important thing for you to know as you meet this potential mentor. Now, the next part will be during the meeting. The first thing you need to do is make sure you show up on time. As a matter of fact, even if you can go a few minutes before time, that would be great. So that is very important because first impression matters. And I always say that you can never get a second chance to make a first impression. So make sure that your first impression is great and is awesome and is amazing. One of the ways you can do that or show that is to make sure that you are there before or at least exactly on time. Now, the next thing you need to think about doing is to take note. So what that means is that you're going with like a notepad and a pen or an iPad or something like that, right? Or sometimes you can actually record, but if you're going to record, you make sure you ask permission from this potential mentor. Say, hey, I really was wondering if you're okay if I record our interactions, just because I want to really listen to them again and make some good notes from it. And at the same time, I want to be present in our interactions. And for the most part, they are likely to say yes. But if they say no, for whatever reason, that's fine. Just respect that. And the least you can do is to go with a pen and a paper, or a book, or like I said, a notepad, and then make sure you're making some notes as the mentor is interacting with you. Now, next is that, remember, these 3 questions that you actually wrote down, they are just like guideposts. They are not like the be or do or. You know what I mean? It's like just to kind of help you start a conversation. So now, one of the major keys in active listening is that you're always making sure you're asking follow-up questions. So if your first question is, say, for example, you've done married for 15 years, what would you say is your biggest secret to making this successful? And as the person is talking, you are listening to key points you're mentioning and trying to come up with follow-up questions you can ask based on that same first question that you kind of prepared ahead of time. Once again, that is just to kind of help you prepare. There are times when I have questions prepared and I don't even get a chance to ask those questions because we couldn't really get to that point. But the point is this: we had a very great conversation and I left, with great answers, maybe more than I was actually expecting. So make sure you are asking follow-up questions. The next important point that I can share with you from my experience is make sure that you respect this person's time. So remember, I told you in the previous video that don't ask for more than 30 minutes. For the most part, they might give you more than 30 minutes, but the least time you have is 30 minutes. Now, make sure that as you're talking, you are kind of making reference to that. For example, I had maybe 2 more questions, but because of the time, I know I kind of asked for 30 minutes and we have just 5 more minutes. So I'm going to just focus on the last question, for this time. Now, depending on their response, you know exactly what to do with that. If you try to do that and they still say, no, you feel free, let's go for it, and you end up spending more than the time that you actually agreed to spend together, it's important you acknowledge it. So one of the things I typically do that, thank you so much for giving me an extra 30 minutes, more than the time that I actually asked for. I'm so grateful. So just make sure you respect that time, and you're not just because maybe they are flowing and they're just giving you some great responses and it seems like they're enjoying the conversation. You just want to let the time go without, making reference to the fact that you guys agreed on a particular time duration. Now, at this point, you're trying to wrap up. Okay, so you've had our conversations and it seems like, it's going well and you want to end the conversation. I always recommend this. Do these 2 things. Number one, give a summary of what you've learned in the session. One of the things I do is that I kind of highlight 2 or 3 of the major lessons that I learned from the interaction. So an example can be, wow, today's been awesome. Like I've learned so many things about marriage and I can't believe that I didn't know all of these things up until this time. Now, you want to be very authentic and honest. Don't try to fake words just because you want it to sound right. Just be real and be honest. And you can say things like, well, one of the things I've learned is that you did mention that a great marriage can only happen between 2 great forgivers and not necessarily 2 great lovers. Now, that's a good point. So you just want to highlight 1 or 2 of the points that this mentor shared with you in the session. And then the next thing you do with that same summary is you appreciate the person and say, thank you so much for making time for me. I'm so grateful that, you did make time for me and I'm so thankful for that. Something like that. And once again, like I said, depending on whether the person give you more time or not, you want to acknowledge at this point. Now, finally, you want to end with next steps. Now, for the most part, most of my mentors are Christians. So I kind of hey, man, do you mind saying a prayer for me? Even as we wrap up the session, you kind of do that. And now, this is very important. Remember, this is your first session, and there are no guarantees as to whether this mentor can make extra time for you. Or even if you might even feel like, this was a great conversation and you want to reconnect with this mentor again. So depending on what that looks like, let's say if you spend 45 minutes and the mentor was like, man, this was so good, which has happened to me a lot of times. Can we do this again? So if towards the end of the conversation, you kind of are very sure of the fact that you're going to have this thing happen again, try your best to see if you can schedule something right there. If not, at least acknowledge and say, man, thank you so much for being willing to actually make some more time for me, going forward. I really look forward to our next session in a month's time, something like that, right? So just make sure the next step is very clear. Now, if that was not the case, where in a sense that there was no agreement concerning whether you're going to have another session with this mentor again or not, just to acknowledge all the things that the person shared with you, appreciate them, and then just say, well, I just look forward to reconnecting with you again, something like that, right? And then you can actually end the meeting from there. Now, the last part I'm going to talk about is after the meeting. Now, guess what? You've gone for this meeting, you've had a great interaction with this mentor or potential mentor, and then now you are, gone back home or whatever that looks like. I always recommend sending a message within the first 24 hours after you leave the meeting. So it can be right after you get home, it can be the next day or whatever that looks like, but make sure you try to do it as early as possible. That's what I'm trying to say. And then what do? You send another appreciation message. I know you did that in the session, but it just makes a world of difference if you do that again. And then number 2, what you do is that, you also, once again, can still highlight. I'm still thinking about the things you shared, and this point still stands out to me. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to apply it to my life, something like that, right? And then, of course, the next thing would be, if, like I said, if there was a decision that you've already made concerning the next steps, you highlight it again and say, hey, and I'm really looking forward to our next meeting. Let's keep in touch, something like that. Now, having said all of this, what I'm going to say next is extremely important. One of the greatest joys a mentor can have is when a mentee is able to implement something that is suggested or recommended or advised, whether or not it worked, but at least they try to implement it. So from the time that this session ends to the next session, what you want to be doing is that think of all the things the mentor shared. Maybe it's a book they recommended. Maybe it is, a podcast they recommended. By the way, in the previous video, I talked about the fact that one of the questions I asked every mentor I meet is, who do you know that you think I should know? What have you read that you think I should read? Simply put, what resources do you have that you think I should definitely get access to? So it can be a book they recommended. Look, the least you can do, at least order for that book, buy that book, and send a picture and say, look, I just got this book. I can't wait to read it. If you've started reading already, great. Do at least one thing, okay, that you know that based on the interactions that you had, is something that is practically possible to do until, if you're able to meet again or not, that will actually happen. And I think that will go a long way to create a good first impression and hopefully, build this relationship to the point where you can actually have an ongoing mentorship relationship. All right, I hope these points were very helpful to you. Just let me know in the comment section what you think about it. Let me know which part of it you feel like I could have elaborated more on, or maybe which part that you were hoping for me to respond to that I did not. We have one last video in this series, and which will be on terminating a mentorship relationship. So don't miss that one, and stay tuned for that video. Until then, please apply something you learned in this video today, and be good. Go out and be the best that God has called you to be. Have a good one, and see you in the next video. What a joy!